Shalom. Welcome. This week we start a new book of the Torah, the book of Exodus, in Hebrew Shemot. And it's an interesting Torah portion. It gets things rolling. We meet Moses for the first time. We meet Moses as he gets born. The interesting story about his birth is that he's born, and he's born at a time when the male Hebrew children are being killed because of some prophecy that the Pharaoh has received. So his mother hides him. When he's about 3 months old, she can't hide him anymore. He's getting a little big. So they set him adrift in the Nile. Pharaoh's daughter finds him. She doesn't have children. She wants to adopt the child. His sister, who's been following his little ark along the river, offers to bring someone to nurse the child, brings his own mother, who, interestingly enough, gets paid to nurse the child for Pharaoh's daughter. And then the child, we're told, is brought back after he's been weaned and given to Pharaoh's daughter to be raised. And we find out that he's raised in Pharaoh's palace. Well, this is very interesting because Pharaoh's palace is a really rarefied kind of an atmosphere. Egypt had schools, and the most prestigious and elegant of these schools was called the Prince's School, and it was where the children of the Pharaoh, the children of the other courtiers and nobles of Egypt were educated about from the age of 8. And in addition to mathematics and astronomy, these children who were being groomed to take over positions in the government, which were hereditary, were educated in politics, they were educated in the military, they were educated to be leaders. And we can only assume that Moses was a part of this educational process until he fled Egypt. He fled Egypt as a young man because of a killing. Well, Moses, as a child, is brought back as a toddler. What possibly could he have gotten into? Now, we all know, all of us who are parents, that as children grow older, they get to be toddlers, they're wandering, and they start doing things. They don't necessarily do things that are appropriate, and they're attracted by things. And Moses was no different. There is a story about how Pharaoh was giving a banquet of some kind, he and his wife as Queen of Egypt, and the family was there. And from what the story says, Moses must have been either being held by Pharaoh or sitting on Pharaoh's lap, because Pharaoh's recognizing Moses as his grandson. And what doting grandfather would have a public function and not have the kid nearby? So, as the story goes, Moses reaches up and takes the crown on Pharaoh's head and pulls it off and puts it on his own head. Well, this is inappropriate, of course, but let's think about royal crowns. They're shiny. Sometimes they have shiny jewels in them. So it's reasonable for a young child to be attracted by the shininess and the sparkly things. And his grandfather's wearing it on his head, so what's more, yeah, take it, put it on my head. But Pharaoh gets upset because this must mean something. Well, one of the people who's at this banquet is one Bilam, the son of Beor. Now, Bilam is a kind of a magician and a prophet. And he says to Pharaoh, hey, Pharaoh, once before I helped you out, and we were able to avoid some problems. Let me tell you about this one. First of all, this kid's a Hebrew, and they're all crafty people. Look at Abraham. He comes to visit Egypt, and he lies about his wife. He tells one of your predecessors that it's not his wife, it's his sister. His son Isaac does the same thing with Abimelech. It's not my wife, it's my sister. His son Jacob lies to his own father, pretending to be his older brother, so that his father gives him the blessing instead of his older brother. They lie, they're very crafty, and he will have learned this. So surely in the future, not only will he take your crown and put it on his head, he will take your throne away from you, and he will put himself on your throne. You need to kill this child now, before this can happen. Well, Pharaoh listens to Balaam, and he's thinking, this makes some kind of sense. But there's another actor in this little play, and that's the angel Gabriel. Now, the angel Gabriel is there, and he's looking like one of Pharaoh's other advisors. And he speaks up, "Oh, Pharaoh, what if this is just some innocent childishness? There's no design here. What if he was just attracted by the shininess of the crown? Maybe we should create a test. We'll create this, we'll put a sparkly jewel on the floor and a hot coal, and we'll put the child down before these two things. And if he reaches for the jewel, then we'll know that Bilam's words are true and he should be killed. But if he reaches for the coal, then we'll know that he didn't do this out of any forethought or anything. It was just innocence." Well, Pharaoh likes this idea. Frankly, I don't think Pharaoh would have liked to kill his own grandson anyway. However, they set this up, and they put the child Moses down on the floor in front of these two items, and he reaches, starting to reach for the jewel. Well, this is very natural again. Shiny. Cold, it's black, it just lays there. The jewel shines, sparkles. But the angel Gabriel reaches out an invisible hand and directs the child's hand, Moses' hand, to the coal. And he picks up the hot coal in his hand, and it's hot, and he burns his hand, and he goes to put his hand in his mouth, and he burns his tongue. And Gabriel then says, "You see, this was just an innocent child thing of being attracted to the shininess, because there was obviously no design here." Pharaoh agreed with that. And thus Moses was allowed to live. But because he burned his tongue with this hot coal, he had a speech problem for the rest of his life. In fact, We learned this a little bit later when in front of God at the burning bush, he says to God, I'm heavy, slow of speech. I got a speech impediment. I don't speak well. He says this as he tries to get out of going to do God's work. And it all traces back to this incident where he could have lost his life. But thanks to the angel Gabriel, he was spared. This is what might have happened, because this period of Moses' life, we have no written sources. We have nothing. So this could have happened. And again, those of us that are parents could see where these kinds of things happen from day to day. So Moses was spared and continued to grow up in Pharaoh's palace. Shalom.